Well, last year we saw a record-tying 7 wide receivers go in the first round of the NFL draft. Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Nabers, Brian Thomas highlighting that class. It tied the record set back in 2004, the Larry Fitzgerald draft. Not going to get 7 this year, one wouldn't think. Thomas led the way with almost 1,300 receiving yards. Nabers also had over 1,200. The only other rookie over 1,000 was Ladd McConkey, who just missed the first round. He was picked 34th overall. So since we got 7 last year, even though we might not get 7 this year, we want Ryan Wilson to give us his top 7 wide receivers right now, and we're going to count backwards. Well, I think we can do that, right? Yep. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. There we go. Let's go 7. Jack Bech, look, 1 season of production, that was it. But it was his last season, and it was a lot of production, Ryan.
Yeah, LSU transfer, and Louisiana pronunciation is Bech. I had to learn that at the Senior Bowl as well. So Jack Bech, transfer from LSU, went to TCU, and I'll give you a little added bonus here for this segment, Chris. I'm going to give you some comps as we go through these names. I saw a lot of Puka Nacua in this young man, and he is big, he is strong. We'll see how fast he is, but he plays plenty fast, and everything they threw his way, he came down with, whether it was short, intermediate, or deep balls, and he made it look easy, sort of like Puka did once he got to the league. And the issue with Puka was he couldn't stay healthy at BYU, but Jack Bech did this what felt like every single week at TCU after transferring, and then had a fantastic Senior Bowl, ended up being named Senior Bowl MVP for that great game as well on Saturday. I think he's a day 2 pick, Chris. We'll see based on how fast he runs. If he runs a 4.6, I still don't care. I would take him no later than round 3. But we'll find out next week when he gets to Combine with the rest of us.
Ryan Wilson's going to be at the Combine with several members of our crew. He's going to be doing the With the First Pick podcast from there. His very latest mock draft has 5 wide receivers in the first round, if you include Travis Hunter. Let's get to your 6th-ranked receiver right now, and it's Utah State's Jalen Royals, who's the only G5 wide receiver in your top 7.
Yeah, and he got hurt in the middle of the season, so it'll be interesting to see how far along he is. I'm not sure what his injury status is in terms of working out either next week, Chris, or during the pro day circuit that follows in the weeks afterwards. But I saw a lot of, here's your comp here, a lot of Jaden Reed in his game, the day 2 pick for the Packers a few years ago out of Michigan State. Again, speed will be the ultimate decider of where he gets drafted, but he played fast. And I'm pretty sure our buddy Amanda Guerra called a few of his games from the sideline this year. And there's a lot of this, a lot of one-handed catches, a lot of creating separation, a lot of winning at all 3 routes, all 3 levels, excuse me. Not a big target, but he caught everything thrown his way, and when he was healthy, he put up huge numbers on a Utah State team that struggled to keep the other team from scoring. It wasn't Jalen Royals' fault, but when he was on the field, he was the most important person on that offense, and I'm eager to see what that looks like as we get through the next 63 days, I think, Chris, till the actual draft, and whether we'll get an opportunity to see him run and work out.
More relative unknowns there at 6 and 7, but a name that everybody knows if you follow college football, Emeka Egbuka, who was never really the #1 guy on his team. He always had someone else to being his number. Do you think he can be a #1 in the NFL?
Yeah, but he may not have to be, depending on where he lands. The Pittsburgh Steelers are a popular landing spot on the mock draft circuit, and he would play opposite George Pickens there, right? And that would be a perfect situation. I think 1A to 2 is probably his best role at the next level, at least early on. Not to say he can't do it, and the comp for me is Amon-Ra St. Brown. And Amon-Ra St. Brown fell to day 3, Chris, because he ran into the 4.6s. Emeka Egbuka ain't running in the 4.6s. He's going to probably run in the 4.4s, and he plays that fast. Big, strong, physical, can play inside, can play out, and he catches everything that's thrown his way. And again, call out to one of our colleagues. Jenny Dell was on the sidelines for a lot of his games. She said there's not a nicer person in college football, and I've heard the same thing when I talk to folks as well. So great leader, great teammate, also a really good player that can come in right away and be a difference maker, whether it's at 1A or whether it's at 2 or even your #3 receiver, depending on how deep your wide receiver room is on whichever NFL team he lands on.
Yeah, those are the guys that he played behind throughout his career. Olave, Wilson, Smith, and Jigba when he was a freshman, sophomore, then Marvin Harrison Jr., then Jeremiah Smith. But as Ryan said, doesn't necessarily have to be a #1 wide receiver. You mentioned his speed, but is anybody more explosive than the #4 on your list, Matthew Golden out of Texas?
And that's going to be a fun watch next week in Indianapolis when he runs. I don't think he's as fast as former teammate Xavier Worthy, who set the all-time combine record a year ago, and we saw his name on the graphic as one of the first-round picks last April. And I think Matthew Golden, while we had questions about Isaiah Bond over the course of the season at Texas, Matthew Golden got better each and every week. And here you see Quinn Ewers or Archman, whoever that is, just throwing the ball down the field with the understanding that Golden is going to come down with it. Houston transfer, who has kick return ability, and he always seems to be open. My comp for him is Jordan Addison, a former first-round pick. And the issue with Jordan was that he weighed 175 or so at the combine. And is that too light? Turns out no. Jordan Addison's just fine with his weight and the way with which he plays in Minnesota. And that's an example, by the way, Chris, of a wide receiver who's number 2 and doing quite well for himself playing opposite Justin Jefferson. Golden can come in, and a popular landing spot for me is some place like Buffalo, where you have Keon Coleman, who's a different body type receiver that you drafted last year. You get someone like a Matthew Golden in there who can stretch the field for Josh Allen and give them one more weapon, and maybe that one weapon they finally need to get past the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah, and in that range, it would be right there where the Buffalo Bills will be drafting in that first round as well. Let's get into the top 3 as we count down the top 7 wide receivers from Ryan Wilson. And it's Luther Burden of Missouri. How do you really gauge and grade this guy when he didn't have great or really even consistent quarterback play at Missouri?
Yeah, and those are the exact questions he's going to get asked next week by teams, Chris. And I would imagine Luther's going to say some form of, he doesn't want to blame his quarterback, Brady Cook, who was injured the entire year. I would say something along the lines of, in 2023, when my quarterback was healthy, I was unstoppable. And I think that's where you have to start, because it doesn't matter who you are as a receiver. If the quarterback can't get you the ball, that's a wrap on what you're going to be able to do. But 2023, his tape is lights out. And I give Brady Cook a lot of credit for playing injured for virtually all of last season, but he was not the same player, and it affected that offense. But Luther Burden can do a little bit of everything, and he does it pretty explosively. Another guy who's probably going to run really well next week, and my comp for him was Golden Tate, and probably a faster version of Golden Tate. He's that sort of toughness, can play at all 3 levels, and he is consistently open with a little bit of return ability too, if that gets you going.
Interesting year to rank the receivers, because you have the Travis Hunter thing, right? I mean, you decided to rank him as a receiver. You rank him number 2. If he said he was only going to be a receiver and he wasn't going to be a D-back, would you make him number 1?
No, probably not, but only because he's so incredibly raw, and he has a chance to get a lot better as a wide receiver, which is a scary proposition. But in terms of the number 1 guy we'll talk about, he's been playing receiver a little longer, a little more polished, probably a lot more polished as a route runner, a little bigger. He probably won't time as fast. But Travis Hunter, man, it's hard not to get excited about where, if he told me he only wanted to play, placeholder, I would be excited about it, because he's just so incredibly explosive with everything he does. And these type of things, these plays we see here, you can't coach that up, and there are very few people on planet Earth that can do that. So the thought of him actually getting better as a route runner and more nuanced in what he does as a wide receiver is intriguing and exciting if you're an NFL team. I suspect he's going to do both, and probably cornerback is where he'll start, and we've talked this to death. Maybe he'll speak on it next week, and we'll get some clarification on that. But right now, he's 1A to 2 in terms of my ranking at the wide receiver position. Garrett Wilson is the closest comp I came up with. He's such a different type player, Chris. It's hard to put a finger on exactly who he is comp-wise, but Garrett Wilson was my closest one.
I don't know if you've ranked your cornerbacks yet, but would he be number 1? Okay.
Yeah, he's number 1.
But not your
Will
number 1
Johnson
receiver.
Was hurt.
Number 1 receiver
1A
is
receiver, Tetairoa McMillan, T-Mac, T-Sizzle, whatever his nickname is going to be when he gets to the next level. I've been sticking with this. And I talked to teams over the summer. I kept hearing more athletic version of Drake London, and that manifested itself over the course of 2024. The Wildcats weren't very good, but it wasn't because of Tetairoa McMillan. He is truly special. He moves like a much smaller wide receiver, and I say all the time, the 50-yard bombs you throw to him are like long handoffs. He makes it look so easy, huge catch radius, and if you're a quarterback that struggles with accuracy, a young QB, for example, he's going to solve a lot of your problems, whether that's Drake May, for example, playing behind what was a porous offensive line, or maybe even falling somewhere like number 12 to the Dallas Cowboys. I'm sure Dak Prescott would love to have someone like that, as would CeeDee Lamb. Ryan Wilson ranking his top receivers in this year's draft class. There are a few we didn't hit there on the back end, as you see, 8, 9, and 10. Trey Harris from Ole Miss at number 8. And that's Tez Johnson, the adopted brother of Bo Nix and former teammate at Oregon. He is the
10th best wide receiver, according to Ryan. Bunch of coverage coming up next week from the Combine in Indianapolis, including live on site with the First Pick podcast with Ryan and Mike Renner.